Just getting ready for Facebook here. I guess that means I'm live. Okay. So let's do some editing. I have a file called stars here loaded up. I'm going to sort by type. That's going to give me some JPEGs to look at. I already pretty much know which ones I'm going to edit, so. Hello, Hillary. So I've got this one, and it looks like I did lose focus a little bit on the actual truck. I was having a bit of difficulty with that actually this entire time, but maybe it won't be so bad after an edit. Maybe I can just sharpen this part. So I think this will be one of the ones that I edit. And before I get too much along my path, it is my birthday. Time to celebrate. And what that means is la fin du monde. Hillary, can you tell me if the audio is working on the stream? Nice. I was going through some of the pictures that I took last night, trying to figure out which ones I want to edit. I think with this one, it's going to be this one. I think I'm going to start with the trucks. Hey, Lori. So, the trucks. I did a couple different shots of the trucks. What I did was, this is a 30-second exposure flat with no help. This one I had Dave run behind the trucks with a headlamp, and this is pretty much pitch black. You can't tell from the picture, but he's running with a headlamp on behind the trucks, and that's how I got that lighting on the edges of the trucks here if I flip back and forth between them. So you can start to see the light shine through. And then on the third exposure, I had my buddy Sean put another headlamp on and just kind of do like a back and forth scan of the front of the trucks just to light up the bumpers. So that's where I'm at with that. It wasn't long after this that we lost a lot of this sky, so we didn't get a whole lot more pictures out of this stuff, but I think I'm going to start with this one. So 1127. And again, just like last time, I'm not a professional. This is not a tutorial. I am only a professional amateur, and we're just going to hang out and solve some problems in Photoshop. And Hillary, this photo was taken at the back of the old airport in Fort McMurray. I think there's a construction company back there that has a lot of their equipment lined up, ready to go. So when you open a raw image in Photoshop, it gives you this raw image editor to start with, or photo raw, and usually I like to just kind of touch things up in the beginning and then go over it again at the end with Lightroom or something. So it's always nice just to see what the computer thinks things should look like, but I prefer this image cold. I usually do cropping and stuff in Photoshop, actually not in this Lightroom editor, but this one's fun because you can just see what the computer thinks an image should look like. It wants to kill a whole bunch of the contrast in this image, and I don't really disagree, especially in this area over here where these trucks are super white. It looks like it's really cutting the highlights out of here and making it less shiny, but maybe a little bit too less. Too less? It's taking too much away, I think. So it left the exposure pretty much the same. I do agree with killing some contrast. I also agree with killing some highlights. See, if you hold Alt when you slide some of these sliders, it tells you where your image is clipping, which means it's just not using any information at all. It's just assigning it flat white, which I think is 255, like super white. So you can see the grills are super white there. So I just want to cut the highlights until I don't see any of that. Yeah, so it's like that. So I guess if I look at there, it looks like it's clipping, and then there it's not clipping, and I have the details still. You can do the same thing with the shadows. And when I'm starting editing an image, usually I just want as much detail as I can, but some things are black and they're meant to be black. Like inside this wheel well here where it shows like it's being already black, maybe it's not such a huge deal if it stays black. So usually I want to start with a pretty boring image in the beginning. I don't really want to touch the clarity slider or anything, but you can play with it just to see what it does for this specific image. It looks like what I'm noticing the most when I move this clarity slider is it really brings out the details in the trees, and it really brings out the detail on the decal on this truck. But I'm not going to use it right now. And dehaze will be really good for the sky later in this hangout session. So yeah, really minor tweaks here. Go into curves. I don't think I need to adjust anything in the curves at this point. I'll probably do sharpening later, but noise reduction is really nice to do in this particular part. So let's see what we can do for noise reduction in here. Luminance. The tricky part with noise reduction is that it is also going to kill the detail on my stars. So you just want to use it sparingly. I think something similar with the focus happened here where I just had it set to infinity, so the stars look really good, but the trucks look a little bit sloppy. We're going to fix that later with the high pass filter. This is a real fun set of sliders. I don't think I'm going to use it for this one, but if you look at like the reds here, these reds, I could make them pink potentially, or orange with those sliders, but I'm not going to do that right now. Chromatic aberration. Usually when you shoot stars or anything super high contrast, you can start to get chromatic aberration, which means it'll add colors that don't exist. And I don't know if this checkbox is actually going to do anything for me on this particular image. I don't think so. You can add gradient vignette in this portion too, but I'm not going to do that. So just a couple of basic corrections just to get detail back, and then we can go right into Photoshop. So let's plan out our mess. First of all, duplicate the background layer. And one of the first things I want to do this time is just give this a crop and see what happens if I remove this truck in the background, because this looks like a articulated haul truck is distracting me from the rest of the trucks. That looks pretty nice. So I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to do that at the end probably. So we're definitely going to want to sharpen this entire image. We're going to want to sharpen the stars even more. There's a lot of detail in the ground here that I don't necessarily want. I don't know if we solve that by making it blurry or by making it darker. And I really want to bring out the detail on like this sterling. We're going to want to mask out the numbers on the license plates just for their own privacy. And I think I want to leave the trucks gritty, so I could come and do something like create a layer, you know, go into healing, sample this area and clean up this bumper like that, and you know, make it look a little bit cleaner overall. But I think I want to leave the rust and all the grime and stuff in the picture. this one. So another good practice is to save your work. So let's go to Photoshop. This one is the old Lino trucks. Okay, let's start. So usually when we do stuff like this, we want to treat it like a sculpture. Hi, Thomas. We'll treat it like a sculpture. So when you make a sculpture, say you're making like a bust or something, some person's head, usually you'd want to like create like the wireframe, which is the details of the overall image, which is kind of what we do when we take the picture. Then we want to mold the clay around the frame, which is things like healing and adjusting the image in any way. If we wanted to add trees, if we wanted to add stars or anything like that, we want to get all that out of the way first. Or if we wanted to do liquefy, anything like that. And then after that, then we start to paint. And painting will change the colors, change the brightness, affecting the pixels in a way that doesn't affect the structure of the image. So first things first, we will go in and we will remove the license plates. Try and make it in a way that is something that they can't read. Of course, you and I will know the license plate numbers from the stream, but anybody who looks at this image in the future, or fingers crossed, you know, buys it on Canvas or something, they won't know. Another tactic for this would be just to make the image so blurry that you can't read it instead of just painting them out. But this is kind of doing both, so let's do that. Like, I don't mind having a little bit of red text on there. Like, that almost looks like maybe that's what I want to do instead. It's just maybe trying to blur it out. Let's try that. I don't think I can blur. Can I blur non-destructively? That just sharpened it. Why would it sharpen it? There we go. Hey, Keith. So we're just blurring some license plates. And this way, I get to keep the red text, which everyone who's from Alberta would know that there's red text there. But I get to keep it in a way that doesn't reveal the owner of the truck. It's funny how you can still kind of read it. I think I'm just going to erase like one of the letters, just so that you have to do a little bit of guessing. Just kind of get it a little bit out of there. There. Now you can't really read what it says. Okay. Are there any others? None that I can read. There's a lot of noise in this half of the picture. I'm wondering if I want to try and do something like a noise reduction on one part of the image. Because a noise reduction in the stars is really going to crap my style, but a noise reduction on the trucks might actually help. And I think I want to do the noise reduction before I do a high pass filter, so I don't accidentally high pass all of the noise and get more noise. Hey, Jesse. If you guys haven't heard of Jester, the Insane Joker, and who I think might just go as Jester now, or Joker now, you should definitely check out his music. And Jesse, I suggest you put a link to your music in the text there. It's really good. Let's do a noise reduction. How are we going to do the noise reduction? So I think I'm just going to merge these two layers and try to find a way to do some noise reduction. Camera raw. Can I do that kind of thing as a filter? Let's see. That's probably a weird thing to do, but can you do noise reduction? You can. Okay, so I want the exposure to be there, and I want the saturation to be there just fine. But I do want to reduce the noise. So that reduces the noise pretty good. So what this what I'm doing here is creating a, what do they call this? I mean, it's a graduated filter, but instead of applying the change to the entire image, it's just applying the change to this section of the image, and it's applying the change more to the furthest, to the bottom pieces and less up to the top here. So what it's doing is basically just reducing the noise on the trucks. That's the goal. Perfect. We're just going to accept that, and that'll be what we get. Perfect. So now we've reduced the noise here. I think what we want to do now is call this main. We want to create a copy of it. Call this high pass. And then what we're going to do with high pass is we are going to go into filter, other, high pass filter. And what we want to do is select an amount of pixels that gives us a bunch of detail on the trucks, but not enough that it starts to give us colors. So if we go to like 1,000 pixels, you can see that it's grabbing all the colors and everything. We don't want colors, we just want the details on the truck. And it looks like for the fine details, that's about 1.7 or 2 pixels. Let's try 2 pixels. So if you do 2 pixels, and we're going to add a filter because I want to apply this effect separately to the stars. Okay, perfect. Jesse put his stuff in the chat there. Jester IV or Jester 4. And we do with this is we go and we can either select soft light, linear light. I usually like to use linear light. And what you can do when I flip this on and off, if you've got this stream maximized, is you can see that it really brings out the details in the image. And I'll zoom in on the trees just so you can see that effect even more. I'm going to flip it on and off here. So this is with it off, this is with it on, and you can see it's a very strong effect. So use wisely. You can also change it to soft light if you want it to be a little bit less. See how it made it a little bit less there? We're going to go back to linear light. Another way to reduce the amount of the effect is to lower the opacity of the effect. So you can see you can apply as much as you want. So for this first one, I think what I will do is actually keep the effect on the entire image, because you can see it actually did some really good things to the stars. And we're going to copy the high pass by pressing Ctrl J. Turn off the original one, and we're going to give it a filter, which it actually already has. We're going to switch to our brush and paint in some black filter everywhere that we don't want to see any additional sharpness. So right now, after 2 passes of that, it looks like the trees are getting kind of blown out. What you want to avoid with extra sharpness or extra contrast is having halo effects around the trees. So we're going to not do that. We're going to apply the effect only once to that area. So we want to, on our first one here, we want to paint out basically everything that is a tree or a truck or the ground. And we do that by selecting our black brush. We can do it pretty soft. Make sure the flow is 100. And then just paint out all the areas where you don't want that additional sharpness. And you can see right away how that affects the image. It A, really reduces the noise, which is good. And B, really kills the sharpness of the pieces of the image that you don't want to be sharper. So I'm just going to paint that on. Hey Kim. We're just going to paint that on here, and we're going to make this less sharp. But remember, we still have some amount of sharpness on the trees. So if you look here, I can turn this back on, and that gives me the sharpness back. But what we're doing is we're going to apply the effect multiple times. And with this effect, the reason I like this effect is that you can stack it as many times as you want until you reach a point of sharpness that's inappropriate. And then you can back it off a little bit. And that's apparently how you make art. So if you know what the image is supposed to look like, you can always go to your layer here and see the areas that you forgot to fill in. So you can just fill those in. Smaller, harder brush. Fill in those details that you forgot. I think that became not quite black, so I'm going to press D to reset the filter. Yeah, you can see, I don't know if you can see on the stream, but I can see on my screen that I was using something that was almost black. So I switched it back to black, and now it works just fine. Perfect. So we're going to put the one layer of high pass on. Yeah, this is my 30. Welcome to 30. And now I'm partying with you people. Okay, so now we've got an effect that really only applies to the stars. I'm just going to flip it on and off really fast and turn on and off the filter just to see if I missed anything. It looks like I might have missed this area. Yep, I did. Mazel tov. It looks like I have frosted tips. Is that true? I'm going to open up my version of the stream here. I don't actually have frosted tips, but I mean, maybe that's coming back. I thought we were heading towards the 20s and we were going to get swing dancing back, but we could easily get frosted tips back. I mean, fingers crossed we don't, but anything is possible. There's a lot of fine details in here that I'm anxious I'm going to overemphasize if I multiply this effect too many times. So I'm going to be really careful and go over each of these antennas individually. And another way you can do that easily, actually, I just remembered, is if you click on one end, hold shift, and click on the other on straight objects, what it will do is create a straight line between those 2 points. And that'll really help save you some time and save you some effort on there. And if we switch, you can see those exactly straight lines. That's a really nice trick. That trick saved me a lot of time on the bucket wheel. There's a lot of areas that are kind of crisscrossed that were just straight lines, and if I had to go over it and just like really slowly go over it without that trick, it would have taken me twice as long. So hold shift for your health. Albie's eating something in the hallway. Albie, what are you eating? It's a hair scrunchie. And not a soul, for once. So, you can see with this effect, you can copy it as many times as you want until you've got a ridiculous amount of sharpness. I think that's too much. So, let's just see how many times we can get away with this before it's too much. That's too much right there. So, we'll kill this one. We'll go on the opacity on this one to like 60, so it's not quite a full one. And we'll save that for now. Thank you, Keith. I like your hair too, whatever's left of it. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. And I think you can increase the quality of your hair with frosted tips. Hi, Graham. Finally, someone in the stream who's going to tell me what I'm doing wrong. So, I just added a whole bunch of sharpness to this these stars. And what that's done is made them really, really noisy. So I think I'm going to try something new this time. Increase the sharpness like crazy first, and then try to reduce the noise after. We'll see how that pans out. I'm actually going to delete this one, add one more high pass to everything. And yeah, that's what we'll do with that right now. Keith, send pictures of your frosted tips later. Bonus points if you can get it done tonight. So we have a whole bunch of noise in the stars. I don't know if I can actually get rid of those with a layer without just using a filter. Reduce noise. I've never actually used that one before. But I think what I'm going to do is, since we're just hanging out and I'm not really trying to teach anybody, I'm just going to merge all these layers. Go into the camera raw filter. Go into the noise reduction section. Zoom in on these stars here. Because this is looking like a NASA circa 1988 picture. That's not good. So it looks like it doesn't matter how much we try, this noise is just going to be there. So let's undo some of our horrible choices here. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. Close these. Use a camera raw filter on main, since we've already gone too far with those other images. Zoom in on all of this noise. And try to reduce the noise again from here. So that already did a lot of work there. So maybe like 30 or 40 here. And let's see if we can, we already removed it from the trucks, but yeah, so it's already gone from the trucks. So what this is doing is it's killing a lot of the noise, the digital noise, because I think I had to shoot this at ISO 800. The digital noise within the stars is now gone. So yes to that filter. We want to reapply this first high pass filter. And I'm saving this filter here for something extra special, so stay tuned on that one. We want to do a high pass 2. Go here. We want to filter out the lows on there. Frosted tips, what's the next 20s? What a time. Yeah, I mean, it could be the 2020s with frosted tips. Go to linear light, and that'll add back that sharpness that we had before, but it won't add all that extra noise in the stars again like we did last time. It'll add a little bit, but not as much, because last time we didn't even touch the noise in the stars. Perfect. So now I want to make a copy of that, but what I want to do is copy over this mask, and I don't really know how to do that, so let's look it up. Copy mask, one layer to another in Photoshop. Click and drag the mask to another layer. Press and hold Alt. Okay, let's try that. Ah, hot damn. Okay, so that worked out perfectly. And now we should have extra sharpness in the stars, but without all the extra noise. J. Control J or Alt J, Control J. Control J to add sharpness to the stars, and then there, that's good. It's almost too much now, but I found last time when I did the star picture and I posted it on Facebook, I lost a lot of the star information when I reduced it to a JPEG, so I think I'll just go a little too far on it this time and then see how it works out on Facebook later. Hillary, I'm not sure either. I am not sure either. So it's looking like a lot of the image is very dark, but I think that's okay. We want to bring some amount of detail and contrast to these trucks. And we want to try and defringe some of these stars, because I think I'm still seeing some like green. Yeah, see, like right here, there's some weird green stuff. So one tactic is to desaturate it, but I do want to keep some of that blue in here. So now that I'm happy with that, we can just merge these layers. We're going to work pretty destructively tonight because I'm drinking. So we want to add some additional detail to these trucks, some additional drama. What do we want to do with that? We could probably do some dodging and burning. We could also, let's try this. Let's convert this to a smart object. Let's do a camera raw filter, and let's just try increasing the clarity and just see what parts of the image we like with increased clarity. Let's go to clarity 50. Let's not get too crazy here. And dehaze isn't really doing anything except for adding more contrast for us, so we won't do too much of that. So let's do that. And then what happened when I made it a smart layer was I was able to add a smart filter, which means that I can actually turn that effect off, go into my brush, turn it to white, and add that effect in only areas that I want it. So if I paint white on these areas, what it will do is it'll give me that clarity effect, but only in the areas that I decide, not on the entire image. So it's going to be a small change, but it's small changes like this that really make a difference in the final product. So you can see if you look at that sterlinging thing, it becomes a lot more clear after I apply the clarity effect. Kim, I believe I'm streaming with OBS. Yep, OBS 22.0.2, whatever, and it's 64-bit. I'm also recording it this time with my computer onto my actual like computer file or computer hard drive, so that I can upload it to YouTube and not have it be potato quality. There's a dead pixel there. We'll fix that later. I want my brush. I want to reset my brushes, and I want it to be white. Why is it? What do you mean rasterized? I want a paintbrush. Oh, filter. There we go. Now let's just see what it looks like here to add some detail to these headlights. We added some sharpness already, which is going to help us, but if we add too much sharpness, it's going to add a lot of noise. And really what I want is to just add details to those specific areas around, what would you call those? Boundaries? Around boundaries that give things more dimension. And this is a trick that I'm actually stealing from doing portrait photography. It's something that you can do to people's, you know, eyelids, just to give more definition around just those areas. And what happens when you do it like this is that you leave a lot of undefined space on their skin, and that gives them that kind of nice skin texture without making their skin look too have too many pores or have the pores too defined. And basically what we're doing on this truck grill is making sure that it looks pretty, like a model. There's this really cool, what does this say, Kentworth maybe? There's a logo here. Let's make that logo show up. What I'm doing here is actually making up for my lack of attentiveness on the image when I took it, because if I would have noticed when I was out there that the trucks weren't in focus, I would have you know, taken steps to make sure that it was in focus. In this case, what I could have done is had my headlamp on and pointed at the truck, because this was actually pitch black. I couldn't see anything at all without my light on. Pointed it at the truck, and then zoomed in on my digital zoom on my viewfinder, and then made sure that the truck was sharp. And then taken a second image of just the stars with my focal point set to infinity. And that would have made it so that it was sharp everywhere. I can see a lot of fringing right here. And I'm trying to remember what my favorite tool for defringing is, because my camera raw filter didn't really work this time. But I'll do that after I'm done adding clarity to the grills. Trying to fake being in focus. So what did you guys do for your weekend? You see there when I flip it on and off, I'm trying to decide where I want the details to be in the image. I think I might end up ignoring those other trucks because if these trucks were in focus, those trucks would be out of focus anyway. There's a kitty in the background? Where? Oh, yeah, Albie is here. I thought you meant in the background of the picture. I was like, oh my god, I didn't notice. I actually was in another one of these shots. I was behind a piece of equipment. Oh no, Muffin. Stella's asleep upstairs, so if she's still crying after a couple minutes, I'll go and save her. Yeah, so I was behind a piece of equipment and taking a picture, or I was adding light to the picture, and I heard a bunch of rustling in the bushes, and this is out in the middle of nowhere, so it could have easily been a bear or a cougar or a coyote or a fox or something, but I got out of there pretty fast after. But you never know when nature's going to sneak up on you like that. They don't understand I was in the middle of making art. So let's just see where we've added things here. So these are the areas where I've added some definition. I think I want to add some along this windshield here. And this one too. Nope. Just add a little bit around the wheel well here. I was adding straight lines. You can't really tell unless you look at it like this. Okay, so I think that's all I want to do with that. Let's look at it before and after. It's a small change, but it makes it look slightly more in focus than it was. And I think I do actually want to do just a little bit around here too. On the filter, on the mask, I should say. There. Now that's just one of those details that looks nice. So what we do that is rasterize that, and what that does is it turns it from a smart layer back into a normal layer. And now we can move on to figuring out if we're done adjusting the structure of the image. I don't think I want to cut away any of the trees or anything. I think I do want to crop it now though. So let's go ahead and crop the image now. Just for fun, let's look at a ratio of 5:4. This is the ratio for Instagram. Just to see if this would be a potentially good Instagram image. It doesn't quite give me as much as I want. I really want this much. But I think I can get away with using this much and then cropping it a little smaller for Instagram later. Or not cropping it at all. So what I'm doing with this crop is I'm just eliminating an element of the image that I don't want anymore. Which was that wiggle wagon there. So we're going to save that now. Now we're going to start taking a look at the overall brightness of some of these areas. So let's just start going through a couple of levels and things. So let's look at levels just to see what adjusting levels looks like for us here. What levels does is it actually shifts the brightness of certain areas depending on how far you want to push it. You can see here that some of these areas are already pure white. A lot of the stars are already pure white. a lot of the areas that I had added clarity are now pure white, 255. And as you add more and more, it just starts to make areas white without definition. If you look on the grill here, it makes it really bad for definition. I usually don't like to use levels at all, if I'm being honest. Curves is a much better tool for making adjustments because you can adjust which parts of the image you want to be higher or lower. I'm just going to play around with it a little bit just to see what we can do. The tricky part that I found with night sky images is that if you look at your histogram here, your histogram is telling you the brightnesses of the areas. It looks like I have a lot of pixels that are in this very, very dark area, and usually that would be bad. But in a night sky image where the point is to have a lot of night sky, then having it all down here isn't such a bad thing. I definitely don't want to over edit this photo, but let's take a look at adding some curves. We're going to make this curve pretty bright. What we're going to do with this is we're going to invert the mask. We're going to call this dodge because this is color dodging. Go into the mask, use a brush that's white, and we're going to use a really small flow, like 5% flow. What we're going to do with that is we're going to try and balance out the brightness of these red trucks, which naturally absorb or reflect less light, with these white trucks, which reflect a lot of light. And there was also kind of a flood lamp coming in from this side here that made it so that these trucks were really bright. So what we're going to do is try and just add a little bit of brightness over on just these trucks, just to make even out the score. But we actually don't want to get the ground, so I don't want to get the tires either. So I'm just going to add that effect here on the trucks. And what I'm doing here, instead of using the dodge and burn tools, because they do have their own individual tools, I'm using a curves adjustment layer with a mask. And what that lets me do is it lets me work non-destructively on these areas here. And I can also, you know, see which areas I'm affecting pretty easily using this mask. What I'm doing with a low flow brush is I'm just making small adjustments. It's like I'm pushing really lightly on a pen, just to try and even out those brightnesses between those two trucks. How's that looking, everybody? We can take it away by using a black brush in areas that we can see don't need additional brightness, like the inside of this cab. Oh, that's made it a bad color. Just once, 5%. Okay, similarly, we can create another curves adjustment layer, bring the brightness way down, invert that mask, select the mask, and do the same thing. That's going to be color burn. And what we want to do is do that in areas where we want things to be a little darker. And that'll add some drama to the picture. Now, when Dave was running behind all of these vehicles, adding the light, he was actually spilling light underneath of the trucks on purpose. But we're going to cover a little bit of that up with this burn, because I really don't want the focus of the image to be the ground. In fact, I don't think I want it to be these trees either, so I'm going to add just a little bit of darkness just to these areas here. And that will increase the drama of the shot a little bit too. You can always go back and see, because I'm doing this by hand, some of the areas end up being too dark, like right there. You can just switch it to white, use the same flow, and go over those areas that are too dark, once or twice with that brush. And then it starts to look a little better. And this darkness is looking a little bit artificial, and I think I know why. So I'm going to switch back to black, add some big sweeps like that. Yeah, and that's more like painting. You want to do more like painting like that. Perfect. So instead of just adding random contrast, we can add contrast by dodging and burning on our subject layers. I know why it looked weird. It looked weird because I eliminated the shadows in front of the tires, but I forgot to affect the tires directly, and then it looked really photoshopped. I don't know if that's irony or not. Cool. So now we have our trucks lit up. I think I even want the bumpers to be a little bit less bright. Give it a once over there. Just kind of like a uniformly over the entire thing. I want them to be a little less bright. A little less bright, a little more drama, a little less conversation. So let's just remind ourselves where we started. This was the initial image. And there's our altered image so far. You can see a lot of sharpness increases. You can see a lot of lighting changes. I see a lot of jank in this burn, so I'm going to remove some of it. Sometimes I get lazy and I forget to adjust the size of my brush. And what that does is it makes the night sky behind the trees look dark, which is not what I want. Cool. And what we can do is actually go in between these trees and switch our brush to white again so that we reveal the effect. Go in between the trees where it's dark already and increase that darkness to give it more of a spooky vibe. And then the next step after this is going to be defringing. And I've never had so much need for defringing as nighttime photography. I think it's because the contrast of everything is so high. So that's how you flip. So see here, you've got dark trucks, light ground, dodging and burning. It's the other way around. So I'm going to merge these layers because you can always do more of this later. And then I want to defringe. I think that's under color. Where is defringing? There's a really good defringing tool here, but I can't remember what it is. Hey, my grandma's online. Everyone behave. What's a good defringe tool in Photoshop? If anyone has any defringing suggestions, let me know. I can't exactly remember. I know that I use Camera Raw filter to do it sometimes, but I actually don't want to use it this time. I want to use that other one. Ooh, I don't want a clipping mask. Or was it Lightroom that had the really good defringing tool? I know I use it on my other image, so it exists. I apologize for this being boring, but being expedient isn't exactly the point of this. I thought there was something on color here, but I can't remember. Select the layer with the fringe, go layer matting, defringe. I don't see matting here though. Oh. Defringe, okay. It doesn't let me actually look, so let's look here. Where's a thing with the fringe? There's some stuff with fringing. You can see there's kind of like a magenta, not purple, magenta thing here. So let's defringe. We say 5 pixels, 1 pixel, 2 pixels. Try 2 pixels. That didn't really do anything. That's not the fringing tool that I want at all. Oh, okay, here's a defringing tool I want. So it's in camera raw filter. You can go over here and I see a bunch of magenta here. You see this purple? If I look at that nails it right away. So how much do I even want? It's like less than 3, 2 or 3, 3-ish, and that gets rid of all of that purple. Let's just take a look in the stars to see if that's doing anything for the star. Oh, of course it is. Look how much it's changing it. So 3 might be too much because we do want some of that purple in the sky still. So we got some purple out of the way here. And now we want to add some of that green defringing. Let's just see if there's any green to defringe. There's a lot of orange fringing. I've never seen orange fringing before, but we can try and remove it. Is that not? No, yeah, there is some here. You can see it being removed there. I wonder if that's going to remove the orange from these lights, though. That would be a pain. So no, it's only doing it from the fringe. Oh, it is. Look, if you increase it like a lot, it'll totally desaturate these lights. So maybe we're just going to have to live with the orange on this stuff way over here. Set this back to green. Typically you will see some green fringing anyway, so I'm just going to use 1 just to get rid of the fringes. So that just makes the image look cleaner overall. Now that we've done some light adjustment, some sharpening, and some dodging and burning, I think we're ready just to take this image into Lightroom or just use camera raw filter as a full camera filter this time, and just get an image that is pleasing to the eye. So what does it want us to do? It wants us to crank the exposure way up, lower the contrast, lower the highlights, bump up the shadows. It wants us just to kill all of the drama in the picture. Let's add vibrance too, which maybe I can see. So exposure, I find when I do work on my monitor, I don't know how it looks on your phone, but when I do work on my monitor, even though it's an editing monitor and it's totally flat, it ends up looking really flat on phones. Really dark on phones. I think that the phone screens might be darker. So I'm just going to bump this up 0.25. I'm not going to lower the contrast at all. In fact, I'm going to try the contrast slider up and down just to see what I like better. And I think I might like actually more contrast on this image. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to balance a little bit of increased overall contrast by bumping up the shadows about halfway. Just because it's a little bit much. So I'm going to bump up the shadows just a little bit. I think that the highlights are right in the right spot already. You could bring them down just a little bit, but I think I'm going to leave them right where they are. Just in the blacks, just slightly down. The clarity slider isn't doing anything good for us. It's just giving us more noise and more distortion. The program has suggested that I add a little bit of vibrance. I think if you add a lot of vibrance, it makes the bumper totally blue. So let's just give it 10. Just a little bit. We'll go in here and we'll look at the darks, just adjust the darks up and down just to see what it looks like. Highlights up and down, just see what it looks like. See what sharpening does for us in camera raw filter. It doesn't really do much. We already added a bunch of sharpness, so we don't need to do much more. But do we need to adjust the noise reduction? Maybe we do. You can just we'll slide it all the way up. Luminous detail. No luminous detail. So this is how you get like that painterly effect, like it's an oil painting or yeah, like a painting of some kind. But what that really does is it just kills all the hard work that we did. So we're not going to reduce the noise at all. We could try some split toning. So I'm just going to show you guys what split toning does. And what split toning does is it lets you select all of the shadows. Let's just go to the shadows here and say we want the shadows to be blue. You can increase the saturation, and what it does is it takes all of the shadowy tones and it makes them really blue. So if you want the sky and the ground to be a little blue, you can just add a little bit of saturation, and you can make that whatever color you want. Actually, you could make the sky kind of purple. That would be all of the highlights though, or all of the shadows. Kind of purple or kind of blue. Typically you'd use blue. So just do just a little bit of saturation. Just nudge it, right? We can make the highlights a different color if we want to. We can make the highlights teal. And that'll give you that teal, that classic teal and blue look, or orange. But the orange and teal look is mostly for human skin. You don't want that for this. I think just the blue in the shadows is fine. We did the defringing. That's great. We don't want to add any grain, but we can add some vignetting. Just a little bit, not much. I don't want to do any of that stuff, so this is where we're at with that. I think what I want to do is I want to add a graduated filter here. I want to find everything that's up there, and I want to apply some effects to just the stars, which would be roughly this area, like that. I'm just going to extend this up. Perfect. So what you can do is you can adjust, and it'll primarily affect the areas that are really close to the top. So you can kind of overlap the areas you don't want to affect, and it won't really affect them anyway. So you can increase, the saturation. You can improve the defringing. So I think what I wanted to do was add, was it clarity? So adding clarity just gives you a little bit more detail on those clouds, which we haven't really been talking about at all today, but you can increase the clarity on the clouds a little bit. I don't want to reduce the saturation of the sky. You could lower the sharpness. I don't want to do that. You could change the exposure on the sky too. I think I wanted to increase the contrast in the sky. Yeah. That's not too bad. In fact, we could even increase the contrast of the entire image, but in a graduated way. Graduated? Yeah, graduated way. And what that will do is just give us some more details in the stars, and I think that'll be really pretty. So, we'll do it like that. That just changes things a little bit. And then we're left just to go and find our text and say, is that text just too big? What happened here? Oh, it's that color. So we can change the color of that by clicking on this, selecting this white. Yeah, it's like a silver. This white, and then putting our name down in the bottom. Don't forget to sign your work. I don't have anywhere creative to hide it this time. I don't usually like to put it on the right side where there's not supposed to be something. Let's put it there. Let's change the opacity down so it's not that obvious. 25%. Save that up. There, that's not too bad. So we want to export a couple different versions of it. So we want to export a full-size PNG, definitely. And I have a specific folder for this kind of thing. So we're going to go, I know what day it is today. It's September 8th because it's my birthday. We'll do stars. We're going to call this Lino Trucks. I'm going to add a Facebook folder to it, but I'm not going to use it. Exporting just a full-size PNG. And that'll give us, you know, the highest quality that we can get, more or less, from an export. And then, something that I like to do is I like to save a version of it that's a JPEG. And for Facebook, usually the maximum is 2048. So we do 2048 height, and you can export that. To your Facebook folder, Line of Trucks. And what happens is when you do the size reduction in Photoshop, you get much better results than when you let Facebook decide for you. So that's where we're at. I'm going to save this one up, take a small break, and then upload this picture, and then maybe start another stream for another picture, or I might go play some video games. I don't know. Yeah, so I guess if you like that, share the page with your friends. Bye.